There's no denying the fact that Honda and Nissan are two of the world's most influential automakers, at least in the past couple of decades. Nissan has created iconic cars like the 350Z and the Skyline across its generations, from the R32 all the way to the R35, and most notably the R34 GTR or Godzilla. Now, from Honda, we've had the Honda Integra, Honda NSX, and the Honda Civic Si. All of these cars have really influenced the last couple of generations, everything from street tuning to popular culture and automotive racing. And now we're looking at a situation where the automotive landscape has changed so much that these two automakers have to combine forces in order to maintain their existence into the future. So, what's behind the situation? Well, let's begin with Nissan. So, Nissan has really been struggling for the better part of a decade, if not more. In 2010, their sales were around 4 million units, and that number peaked to about 5 million in 2015. But since then, Nissan has really been in decline, and their numbers are roughly around 3.2 million units. So they've seen quite a drop off in their sales performance. Now, this is for a couple of reasons. Well, the first reason are two of the biggest markets in which they operate. So in China, Nissan has really felt the impact of the emergence of automakers or Chinese automakers, and this would include companies like BYD, NIO, XPeng, and Geely. But this is not just limited to Nissan. The Japanese automakers overall have really felt the impact of the emergence of the Chinese automakers. This includes Toyota and Honda as well. In the US market, Nissan doesn't offer hybrid vehicles, which Americans prefer. And those have been quite popular sellers for the automakers who offer them, especially Toyota and Honda. These are Nissan's direct competitors. Now, according to Uchida Makoto, the company is facing bankruptcy by 2025 if it doesn't turn its performance around. The company's sales are down 16% year over year in China and 10% year over year in the US. So there doesn't seem to be any end in sight, at least in the foreseeable future, for the company to turn its fortunes around. Now, as far as Honda, Honda is a much larger company than Nissan, roughly 4 times larger than Nissan. Their sales have been relatively flat over the past several years, so the company is in a reasonably stable position, but they too are facing a future where they are really sort of at a disadvantage compared to the Chinese because they haven't embraced electrification and really don't have the mix of models to compete with the Chinese. So this is an opportunity for the two companies to combine forces in order to be able to shift that sort of dynamic in favor of better competition or better being able to compete with the Chinese. If you're a fan of Honda or Nissan, you're probably very unhappy about the prospect of a merger given the respective heritages of these two companies. But the decision to merge or evaluate a merger isn't just between Honda and Nissan. It also involves the Japanese government, specifically the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, or METI. Now, METI is responsible for providing support to business and industry across Japan. As it relates to the automotive industry, they provide the regulatory and policy framework for the automotive industry, and they provide innovation and support. So this includes research and development, as well as the investments necessary for the automotive industry to remain viable. They also provide support from a crisis management perspective. So as it relates to Nissan, this situation would prompt METI to get involved. And then also METI provides the sort of pathways for collaboration, finding opportunities for Japanese businesses and industries to collaborate. So they've identified this opportunity as it relates to Chinese competition, as well as the current state of the global automotive market for Nissan, Mitsubishi, and Honda to perhaps merge in order to strengthen. And then finally, METI is responsible for negotiating trade deals with various countries for the support of the automotive industry, the Japanese automotive industry. Nissan plans to cut its workforce by 9,000 people. Now, many of those people are employed in Japan at Nissan factories, and then also it would cut production output by 20%. So that's a pretty significant impact, but it's not just localized to Nissan. Those 9,000 employees and 20% production cuts are what they are, but there are several third-party suppliers to Nissan who would be impacted by that. So it would be companies who provide components and also support for Nissan as it relates to their various automotive products. So there could be a cascade effect that would really have a significant impact to the Japanese economy, its labor force, and society overall. The thinking is that the three companies could combine their expertise and their know-how and really use that to sort of innovate as it relates to EV technology or battery technology and put them in a better position to compete collectively with the Chinese and companies like Tesla overall. Now, that sort of situation isn't so clear cut. Now, while it sounds good on paper, in practice, there would be some significant hurdles to overcome. Namely, it would be that Honda and Nissan are engineering companies, and how do you determine sort of where the responsibilities lie, and also who would really get sort of to make those determinations about the direction of the combined companies. So this is going to be a very challenging situation to navigate. Now, Honda CEO Mibe Toshihiro has weighed in on this, and his perspective is that the Chinese really sort of benefit from the advantage of low labor costs and low manufacturing costs. This allows them to produce EVs at a faster rate as well as at a more affordable price point, which is very attractive to consumers. But it's not just that. Really, what has shifted the dynamics as it relates to the global automotive market is that the Chinese automakers are offering cars that really appeal to Chinese buyers. This includes the technological features in the car as well as the capabilities. So this would include autonomous driving, something that the Japanese and other automakers worldwide trail behind the Chinese in. One, these types of features that really appeal to buyers, to the capabilities like autonomous driving. And none of these companies at the moment really have a compelling technology that is positioned to compete. So that's one of the other major hurdles as it relates to this combined merger, on top of Nissan's financial situation. Now, from Mibe's perspective, he says that the Japanese need to solve this quick because the Chinese are so competitive that if they don't fight the Chinese, though in his words, is that the Japanese will be beaten. Now, his perspective is that this is a situation that needs to be solved by 2030. But is that realistic? We are currently approaching 2025, and given the product development cycle for vehicles, is this something that the companies could achieve in that timeline, or is the game already lost? The earliest this merger between Nissan, Honda, and Mitsubishi would take place is 2026. Now, here's where I think there's some misinterpretation of the current situation. People think that this merger is set to go. That is not the case. The announcement is that the three companies would be in discussions over the next 6 months to really identify roles, responsibilities, and opportunities to see if this merger is worthwhile. This is not something that Honda needs at the moment, given their position. They're 4 times larger than Nissan, and they also are in a more or less favorable financial situation than Nissan. So from Mibe's perspective, he said that we are not bailing out Nissan. We're in a situation where we will consider this merger, but Nissan really needs to get its financial situation in order for this merger to go through. Now, let's be reasonable here. Given that Nissan is looking at bankruptcy by 2025, if its fortunes don't change, that the earliest discussions would wrap up over a potential merger between Mitsubishi, Nissan, and Honda would be June of 2025. This doesn't at all look likely as a possibility as it relates to the three companies merging, or even just 2 of the companies, Honda and Nissan, merging. That's just not a reasonable timeline for Nissan to turn its fortunes. Now, there's also history at play here as well in terms of how Japanese automakers typically communicate. So, if you recall, in March 2023, Honda announced that it would be restructuring its organization to pursue EVs. And since that time, we've not heard anything or seen anything that indicates that Honda is positioning itself to focus more on EVs. They also announced around that timeline, the March 2023, April 2023 timeline, that they would be repurposing one of their plants for EV production, as well as creating a new battery plant in collaboration with LG. Now, those were supposed to be in place by the end of 2024, and we've not heard anything about that since then. And I think that this announcement regarding or related to Nissan and Honda merging is going to go the same way. It's just too short a timeline. It's not something that Honda needs, given their current product mix as well as their financial position, and Nissan has a lot of work to do to turn itself around. Now, the combined companies have roughly $195 billion in terms of their overall market capitalization, so they would be a very large automaker if they could put it together. In terms of their overall share of the market, these two combined companies would roughly have 8% of the market. That would put it behind Volkswagen and Toyota. Toyota has 11% of the market. But if you look at everyone sort of below that number 3 ranking, the Koreans between Hyundai and Kia would roughly represent 7% of the market. Now, the other issue that's really underlying this as well is BYD is roughly just under 4% of the market, and Tesla is right around 2.5% of the market. So if you look at where these companies are really going to be challenged no matter what they do, it is the rapid rise of Chinese automakers, namely BYD, Tesla, and then also looking at the strength of the Korean automakers. From my perspective, I don't think that this merger has any chance. One, Honda has historically operated as an independent company, and as it relates to any prospects of this merger, their board is going to ultimately be the final decision makers on it, and I don't think that they're going to greenlight this merger. Also, when considering timelines, Nissan is facing bankruptcy by 2025, and Honda has already said a prerequisite to any possibility of a merger is for Nissan to turn around its performance. So given the timeline, that's simply not realistic. Now, former Nissan CEO Carlos Ghosn has called this a desperation move, this potential merger, and that it is destined to fail. The reason being is that the companies have no complementary products. They basically make the same products, and so he doesn't see anything really beneficial coming out of this merger between the two companies. And this is a global issue as well. The European automakers, as I mentioned earlier, are dealing with this. The EU has just implemented taxes or tariffs on Chinese EVs, currently at 10%, which will increase to 45% over the next 5 years. And the US has already implemented taxes on Chinese EVs. Those currently stand at 25%. And with the incoming presidential administration for President-elect Donald Trump, he's already threatened to put even higher tariffs on imported vehicles, including Japanese vehicles. So this is currently a situation, a global situation that the large automakers, the legacy automakers are currently facing. And now it has hit harder, even harder in Japan. So let me know what you think about this, whether you think that this merger should go forward, whether it has a possibility of going forward, and what the company would look like. And also, is there any answer currently for the emergence of the Chinese, their product offerings, as well as Tesla? We didn't talk a lot about Tesla in this particular video, but Tesla has also put a lot of pressure on legacy auto manufacturers as well. So thanks for watching, and look forward to bringing you more great content as it relates to e-mobility and EVs in the next video soon. Thanks.